that Tim skated with us, we would scrimmage 2 versus 2 with 20-second shifts. The condition was you had to change fast. So that meant your feet have to be moving with a 20-second shift. It's ridiculously short. And as a coach, you could extend it if there was an offensive opportunity existing or a breakaway happening. But you blew the whistle, passed it to your goalie, and you had to sprint off and sprint on. If there was any gliding, it was wall time for everybody. And you talked about, why are we doing this? Why is it important? And you relate it to the game. And they get the message. The drill itself, it replaces the old-fashioned conditioning skate of our time. 20-second balls out scrimmage, fast, quick changes. And the habit of respecting the importance of changes was reinforced by that. And most of the coaches I brought it up with adapted that. It became a part of their culture and their approach to coaching the game at that level. So, Matt, welcome back. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry for that. We've got our pool out back is actually just getting opened up today, and I'm the only one here, and they were knocking on the door, so I apologize for having to run. And if it was covered, then I apologize. But when I was gone, but I love the points, Darryl. I love the reframing of it, right? Because at the end of the day, we're talking about trying to develop habits in players, right? And I'm always, as a coach, trying to find ways to motivate players, to develop good habits, keep those good habits. And a big one for me that I've always found successful is if you could find some way to reframe the thought process so that they are feeling that responsibility towards their teammates, which is what you're talking about. I find that those are often some of the greatest motivators when you've created a situation where they don't want to let their teammates down, and that just sort of floods into everything they're doing after that. So that hey, your shift adds responsibility, towards your teammates. Then you can get into possession tactics. You can get into smart changes, your shift length, your face-off location, as you talk about, just general momentum of your shift and effort, and then just the general effort and skating to the bench. These are all individual habits, but you can put them all into that same pile and say these are areas that are your responsibility for your teammates. And I think that's an excellent way to reframe it. And I guarantee you I'm going to be using that. And I like the idea about the culture as well, because I think you can do an off-ice team building exercise where you have, group A and group B. And I'm just sort of thinking of this on the fly, but they're doing a task. And if group A doesn't do it satisfactory in a way that you want them to, then it's going to affect team B. And then you ask team B, how did that feel, right? How did that make you feel that when team A left you with this situation? And then you can bring it back to, okay, that's what it's like when they leave you with a bad shift as well, right? So I think that's an excellent way to reframe that.
I think that there's a lot of different ways to look at this, and we come at it, or at least I'm coming at it from more of a player development perspective of trying to, get this player to respect the shifts and have an understanding of, how they can utilize their time. And the way I look at it with an elite player who's overstaying their shifts, and the longer the shift goes on, the more hope they play with. And I hope I get a bounce here. I hope that there's a rebound. I hope that the puck stays in. And I try to tell people, top players, as much. Hope is just not a strategy. We don't play with hope. We don't play with hope. We are playing with a purpose. And in order to play with, and if you do those purposes consistently, eventually the bounce that you are hoping to get will just happen for you. And so trying to teach kids to not play with hope, I think, is an important aspect. And I think that the younger elite players are used to playing with that. if I just wish that this, don't give me a pass. I'm the fastest player on the ice. Just throw it out in the neutral zone. I'll go get it and go get a breakaway. Like, that's a hope play. And the older you get, the more hope that needs to be attached to that play in order for you to get a breakaway. And so I think what I try to do as a piggyback to just this concept, whenever I'm thinking about it from a player development perspective, I'm looking at it from the idea of what's your responsibility here and how can you leverage your talent to improve others, which if you're truly great, that's what you're going to have an effect on. You're not truly great until other people get better because of you. That's you can lead the league in points, you can score the most goals, but if other people are not noticeably improving because of you, you're not truly great. And you tell that to a kid who is trying to be great, and attitudes change quickly.
It's kind of interesting, Darryl, that you got into the hope thing. I was just as a sidebar, I'm reading this really interesting book now. I told Walley about it. It's called The Biggest Bluff. It's about a clinical psychologist who's trained in decision making, who decides she wants to learn how to play poker. She gets some of the best poker players in the world to teach her. Very interesting book. And I just read the section last night that her very experienced, learned poker teacher, coach, is saying, hope is not part of poker. Hope is, your words exactly, hope is not a strategy. You've got to get beyond that. You can't just sit there. So I'm kind of chuckling as you said that. And then just to add on quickly to the whole shift management and good change mentality, just something that I've done with my teams for a lot of years is whenever we're playing small area games of any description, when we change, if there's a whistle for a change, then when we change, the change has to happen glove to glove. So you can't saunter off, you can't drift off. Well, you can, but it's a great opportunity to make the point that if you choose to saunter off or drift off or change at the wrong time, you're putting your team at a disadvantage. So we build it into all of our small area games that if there's a whistle to change, it's got to be hustle off, touch gloves, 1-for-1 in order to make the change, just like you would in a game. So we kind of build in the habit that way.
Changing is a shape. It's a game shape, a competitive advantage, game shape. Changing is a shape. And, I think the more they keep that in mind, the better it is. Because a lot of players don't think that. They're like, okay, I'm getting off. I'll put the puck 200 feet down and I've done my job. And I think redefining what a good change is. I don't know the definition of getting the red line and dumping it in. That's not a good change for me. I don't like that. That for me is several rungs down of a good change. That's not the optimal change. And I think redefining that for your players to change that mindset, I think, is a good one.
And sorry, Kim, if I could quickly interject. We also have this drill with the Danish team. Peter, our head coach, loves to use it without getting into all the details, but it's kind of on that point exactly, Darryl. He calls it ice cats. And it's a random situation where the puck carrier could have support or may not have support, but your job is to figure out if you do have support, and if you don't have support going into the offensive zone, your job is kind of like on a change situation, hold on to the puck, protect the puck, look for an opportunity to get support, and if you need to, then obviously change. So he calls it ice cats, and it's a pretty cool drill to sort of build in that habit that, dump and change is not optimal. If you have to dump, do the flyby thing to stall the opposition at least. All those things are pertinent, of course. Sorry, Kim, I stole some time from you.
I think I get enough time on these, so it's fine. But, I was just going to share, I don't know if I stole the idea from Walley. Walley might have given it to me. I think I steal a lot from Walley of the 20-second shifts. I started doing that drill with all the teams I worked with this year in September, because we had no idea if we were going to be playing 3-on-3 or 4-on-4. Turns out we played 0 games. But when we went into lockdown, we had no idea whether we'd be playing 3-on-3 or 4-on-4 when it started off. So my coaches and I were thinking, how are we going to teach this, like in terms of game flow and gameplay, because the girls just don't have that experience of playing that type of hockey in a full ice scenario. So we started doing 3-on-3 or 4-on-4 full ice with the 20-second whistle. And you had to change every 20 seconds. That was the rule. And it was fascinating to watch how the girls did it, because a perfect example of asking, not telling. That was the only rule. And they're like, what if this? What? I said, just play. So, of course, you guys can all predict what happened. They changed in order. So if Matt went on first, right, he was the first one to come off, irrespective of where, I don't know how they remembered, to be honest with you. The 5 of them were in order on the bench, and then they went on the ice, and then they changed in order. So no one took a longer shift. No one stayed on long, and they were giving up 2-on-0s, and they were getting 3-on-0s. And it was fascinating because like all the rules of normal gameplay went out the window. And we're talking, I did this with the junior kids all the way down to the U11s, but they all of a sudden like forgot everything they knew about hockey and just started changing in order. And then we'd stop it and say, and we did it, every practice we would, sort of do this drill at the end to, it was a conditioning drill, because if they were playing 3-on-3 full ice, we were going to be in trouble, having them, never done that before. But it was really fascinating to stop the play and say, okay, I think I've figured out how you guys are changing. Like, how did you decide on that strategy, or how did that come to pass? And, we finally were able, it was a great gateway to start talking about advantages and, when to, move the puck or keep the puck. And so I think that maybe at the younger levels, lower levels, that might be a good way to segue into what Darryl's talking about, to introduce it in that way. As opposed to, I think if I took it to a U11 and said, leave the ice better than you found it, and started at that sort of higher level concept, that might be challenging, but it might be a fun drill to start with. But none of you would be shocked at Coach the Girls that this is how they decided to change. But even me, who I've only ever coached girls, I was shocked at how they did it. And they're like, oh, we just did it in order because that's like the nice way to do it. Like, oh my God. Lord help me.
The one way to introduce something like that would be in your, games that you play. You could have a stipulation for every game that you play that said you cannot change unless your team has full control of the puck. And so it creates an onus on the team then to try to first get control of the puck and then start initiating their changes. And then what do you do? So maybe it might be a situation where you have to leave the offensive zone. It's better for you to leave the offensive zone, backpedal out, get the passes going on a regroup, a long regroup, and then that starts the changes. And then once everybody's on, then now we get going. So I think that, depending on how you set up your games, there might be, I'm pretty sure you could think of 2 or 3 games in which this type of a constraint would fit nicely into that game, where you're just like, you can't change unless your team has full control. And then you could have that go multiple games in a row and then see what happens. Yes, exactly. The overtime in the NHL, even 4-on-4. Is 4-on-4 in the NHL. You don't want to be giving up that puck. You might not get it back. 3-on-3, if you give up the puck, probably not getting it back. And so, trying to come up with those ways of, that's a way of introducing it in your games. You put a constraints, maybe in your drills. You have certain drills that would lend itself well to, we're not changing until you get the puck and you make successful plays. Those are ways to kind of inadvertently start building the process. And then over time, you watch those games play out, you start to see that they have a handle on it. Well, then now you're ready to take it to another level of execution. Maybe it's a full ice thing. A game at the end of the a game at the end where it's a 4-on-4 and they have to execute their change. And then it's not far departure to go from a 4-on-4 full ice to 5-on-5, finding your way into a possession change.
Totally agree, Darryl. And I was just thinking, like, I think it really is kind of that simple. Play some 3-on-3 cross ice games, or 4-on-4 sort of 3/4 ice. And the only two stipulations are, as you suggest, number one, you change on your own. You're aiming at 25, 30 seconds. You change on your own. You can only change when your team has full possession of the puck. And I might add, because players always do this too, full possession in the defensive zone under pressure, probably not a good time to change. So maybe there's some subtlety beyond simple possession, but I think it's that simple to help get that ball rolling. Totally agree.
Just anything you can do to create an awareness. And then you think of, I know I have this clock going on in my head where I know I'm overstaying my shift. Does that impact the aggressiveness, or sorry, not aggressiveness, assertiveness that I now have to get possession of the puck so that we can change? That there's a lot of benefits to, if we're not going to change until we have full possession of the puck, and I know that my shift is extending, well, now I'm really going to try to find my way into that change, and get that puck back. So that's a really cool side benefit to that. Now I'm a little later in the shift. I'm more tired, and now I really have to go get this puck because I can't get off unless we get it. So it's a really interesting side benefit. If we talk to kind of bring the whole conversation full circle about competitiveness, there's a way of inadvertently adding competitiveness, because you're now at a competitive disadvantage to have to try to find your way into a change.
Darryl, I would have said years ago that this is almost overcoaching. Like, how much can we get across? And the old school players don't want to be told too much. They can be coached, but you sort of have to coach around them. And Tim, the theory of my friend who's written the book on the art of coaching is doing the right stuff, the right amount, the right time, and taking this kind of a simple drill, which I had only just balls out conditioning was the purpose, with the consciousness of its importance of the game, having fun, playing hard, and that little bit of respect. That was enough for me. But everything you've added on now, today's generation of coaching and players, I believe it would be really useful. But how can coaches, average coaches, even advanced coaches that might not be at the level, they begin to take that kind of a concept and apply it? The head coaches you're working with, particularly, that's pretty advanced.
It's just a simple idea of experimenting with your group, saving 10 minutes at the end of practice, and building it as a game. Say, instead of goals scored as your way in which you're saying that you're going to, the way in which you're compiling points for the game, it could be possession changes is what your goal is. I think that there's, in all of these things, it's not a, okay, now we're all in and we're doing it only this way and this is how we're doing it. It's, hey, here's an interesting concept. Let's mess around with it. And I think as a inexperienced coach that's just trying to find their way, taking 10 minutes at the end of a practice and saying, hey, here's a constraint-based game that I can mess around with and just try something different. I'm going to throw it out there and see how it's received. And then afterwards you say to the kids, hey, what did you think was hard? What did you think was easy? Did you like it? How could we make it better? And then now you can get some ownership on it. And maybe they might come up with some ideas that are better than yours. So now you throw them in there, and now you're good. You don't care how it gets done. You're just messing around with it. And I think that sometimes as coaches, as particularly the better the coach I became, the more I took a lot more risks with experimentation. The weaker the coach that I was and the more inexperienced I was, the more I felt like I needed a dialed in plan that had every nuance taken care of. And the more I got experience, the more I was able to ad lib. So with an inexperienced coach, you're trying to find opportunities where they can gradually dip their toe in some ad libbing stuff. And these types of concepts are pretty interesting to dive into. And they're fairly safe. I mean, who doesn't want to play a game? They want to play games, just change the rules a little bit and the constraints on it and see what happens. See what happens. What do you got to lose?
Yeah, I totally agree. And Wally, I don't think it's really what we're talking about is any different than your 2-on-2 20-second shift game. It's no different than that. It's a pretty simple thing, and I don't think it gets into the overcoaching area in any way, shape, or form. It's a simple mental concept, like Darryl's thought about having the clock running in your head is always something that the good players are acutely aware of, and the maybe a little bit more selfish players are a little less aware of. And it's just that mentality that good changes are good for the team, and how do we make them? And I love Darryl's idea again about, hey, play the 4-on-4 with those two constraints. Like you got to change on possession, you got to change on your own. There's no clock telling you when to change. You got to figure it out. And then having the discussion, hey, how was it? Was it hard? Was it easy? How can we do it better? Like that's what we're all about.
No, I agree with you, Tim. I'm thinking of minor hockey coaches that are reluctant to even play small area games because they just want to do flow drills, and we're fighting the battle that they're avoiding teams that are creating rogue teams and leagues for whole ice hockey because they don't want to play small ice hockey, and they're short shifting the best players, and that's the minor hockey dilemma in the game today that I'm primarily dealing with. So when I'm talking about this kind of a concept, our audience here gets it. Like I totally understand the value of it, but we're trying to get coaches to just accept the fact that the game teaches, and Tom Malloy is on. Nobody has as many small area games on his website in the world. And he's been around the world with European coaches, Russian coaches, you name it. And the concept is let the game teach. And adding that kind of thinking to the game brings in a tactical purpose. And I think it's brilliant. But at the same hand, we always have to be cognizant of Kim's working with house league people that are coming into hockey, just beginning hockey, beginning coaches, moving up, going to get to the competitive level. And it's going to be a new experience for her. Working now as a mentor coach in an association with where what we're talking about is something that you have to weigh. What do you do and when do you do it? At what age? And
I it's like when you get these coaches and the more inexperienced they are, like as you're mentoring them or we have people around them that are trying to help them. I mean, sometimes I think it's as simple as just like when you had your practices last week, you did it a certain way. Next week, can you add one thing that's different than what you have been doing previously? Do that for a couple of weeks. Get a sense of it. Once you get that, now add another one. So now the coach is there for, call it 6 months. He's coaching this team for 6 months. He's now added at the end of the year 12 new things that he would never have done previously because he did 2 a month over the course of the time. He added something different to his structure. Could be figured out an assembly line for the first time. He's a house league coach with young kids, and he's like, okay, I want to get this drill to automate so that I don't have to blow the whistle all the time. So I'm going to run some kind of an assembly line. Very simple, right? But that's simple for me, but not very simple for someone who's trying for the first time. Okay, try your hand at an assembly line. Okay, try your hand in a small area game with a constraint, not just a straight 3-on-3 with no constraints. Add a constraint. Just one constraint, whatever it might be. Doesn't matter what it is. Just something new. Then the next week, okay, can you do a drill that the kids come from the middle, like they come, all the players are on the boards in the neutral zone. And so now you're doing a slide in. So everyone's got to slide in, and then they do their thing and they slide out, and the next group slides in. Maybe we can try that. All the different drill formats is how you get at these inexperienced coaches, because the more inexperienced they are, they're going to kind of they're going to see what works and the local people that are doing what they do, and they're going to just stick to that. That's how we got stuck with, we get on the ice, we do the 5 circles, and then we do the 5 circles with a puck, and then we do the this and the that, and at the end, and then there's like this coach is doing one practice plan the whole year because they're comfortable there. They're just not encouraged to try different things. And the more inexperienced you are, the more likely you're going to get, well, this worked last week, so I'm going to do it again this week. And the idea is to try to gradually evolve them with just one idea, one new way of doing things. It's a good way of trying to get that going.
Thanks very much, Darryl. Really appreciate that.
I think I'm just going to add something to that, because I think you're right. You have to give, coaches creative control of those things. You can't just come in and dictate, say you're going to run practice A and B, and this is the curriculum. And it's interesting because I think coaches often at the level I'm coaching at are too creative, and they don't stick with it long enough.